Hi there. So in the previous video I discussed serviceable entry-level HTs, and today, as well as in some upcoming videos, I'll cover how to program those analog models. I may do a video on how to program the one DMR I talked about, but that will be a discussion for a later date because the process for programming a DMR is a little bit more in-depth than what I'm covering here. Since the Baofeng UV-5R is currently a popular radio with everyone ranging from off-roaders, hikers, and campers to prepper groups, we'll discuss how to program it using software called Chirp. I'll leave links in the description below in case you want to download a copy on your machine. There are versions of their software available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. Currently, Chirp is a free open source software for programming analog radios. If you're curious if they support any radios you may own, they publish a list of all the manufacturers and models supported on their website. Additionally, if you ever run into an issue programming your radio with the software, you can log a support ticket and they'll attempt to assist you with troubleshooting. I use Chirp on a regular basis when updating code plugs for any of my Baofengs, and I have also used it to program some Yaesu HTs as well as a couple of TYT mobile units. Overall, my experience using the software has been positive, and I've never personally run into an issue when programming a radio that was the result of a software limitation or a software bug. However, I have read about and heard some anecdotal accounts of Chirp bricking radios. If you're not familiar with the term bricking, it refers to an electronic device that has been damaged beyond repair and resulting in the device being stuck in an unusable state. Before we dig into the steps for programming the UV-5R, I wanted to address the topic of how one might brick a radio. And a couple of examples that come to my mind are mistakenly uploading the wrong firmware to the radio or physically opening up the radio to perform a Mars mod, resulting in accidentally damaging the internal components. I'm sure there are other ways people have bricked their equipment, and I don't want to cover all of the possibilities, so for today's video we'll focus on putting a radio in this state as a result of an issue with the software. I'm not sure if this belongs in the category of urban legend or if there are real provable examples out there where radios have been bricked using Chirp and the process by which the radio was bricked was reproducible. I have, however, heard anecdotal accounts from other amateur operators stating the software could cause an issue, as well as read posts on certain forums making similar statements. Since I use the software, I decided to research the topic further and came across an example of this claim in the form of a ticket from 2019 that was submitted through the Chirp website asking if their software can brick a Yaesu FT70DR. Chirp responded to this inquiry and confirmed that their software will not intentionally let you brick radios and know of no circumstances where it has done it or aware of anyone having approached their team with a bricked radio and a demonstrable process by which it happened. I also discovered an article from 2016 on a website for the Otley Amateur Radio Society discussing the topic of how to fix a bricked Baofeng radio. And according to their post, the most likely cause of conflict between the programming software and the Baofeng is loading an image file from another Baofeng as a quick way to update the channels. Unless the internal firmware is the same revision, you may brick it. Once you've done this, no amount of downloading and editing will fix it, and the only way to restore the radio is using the factory image. The article, which I'll leave a link to below, goes on to provide instructions on how to use the factory image to restore the radio to a usable state. I have to admit, when I was first starting out with these radios, I made this mistake, and I uploaded an image file from one Baofeng to another, and they had different firmware versions. However, in my specific situation, the Baofeng wasn't bricked and was still usable, as in it could still transmit and receive, but it did seem to confuse the radio. After uploading the image file and turning the radio off, when I would turn it back on, I noticed it would not be set to the channel it was previously on, and it would default to a random memory channel. So based on the research I've done on this topic and my own personal experience, I've come to the conclusion that the possibility of breaking a radio due to the programming software, while not outside the realm of possibility, is extremely rare. Aside from the one issue I had, which was operator error, I've never had any trouble with the Chirp software, and over the past several years of using it, it has proved to be a reliable tool. So let's go over how to program the radio. After you download the software onto your machine, you'll need to ensure you have a programming cable. And I've ordered a couple of these cables for the UV-5R from Amazon, and so far I haven't had any quality issues with the two I purchased. I will leave a link to the cable in the description below as well, but if you're programming your radio for the first time out of the box, once you're in the Chirp software and download from the radio, you'll notice it has some frequencies programmed by the factory. You'll want to replace those frequencies with the ones you'll be operating on, of course, but to use this, you'll open this flap on the side and take this end and plug it into the radio, and of course the USB side goes to the computer. After installing the software on your machine, when opening Chirp, you'll see it's fairly easy to navigate. I'm sharing my screen and I have the software open, and the Baofeng is connected to my computer. The next step is to turn the radio on, and from the menu select Radio, Download from Radio, and you'll see a window with three drop-down menus. The first is to select your COM port. The second drop-down is to select your vendor. In this case, we selected Baofeng, and the third is to select the model number of your radio. When selecting the COM port, you may be presented with a couple of COM port options. If you select the wrong one and click OK, an error message will appear. If it does, click OK on that error message. Go back to this drop-down, select the next available COM port, and click OK. You should see a window notifying you that the cloning process is taking place, and I don't know if you can see it, but on the Baofeng there's a red light blinking, letting me know that data is being transferred. Once the cloning process is complete, you'll see a list of frequencies that are programmed on the radio. As I mentioned before, if you're programming the radio for the first time, out of the box, the factory has some frequencies that are programmed into the radio, and you'll want to disregard those. For demonstration purposes, I've programmed some frequencies into the radio just to show you what you might see. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of those and delete them. And in the first line, I'm going to enter a frequency that I want to use. So I'm going to enter the 2-meter national calling frequency, so that's 146.5200. And you can name your frequencies, so I'm just going to title this one Nation. It's a simplex frequency, so I don't need to add a tone mode or a tone. The next one I'll enter is a weather channel, so 162.5500, and we'll call it weather. And if you want to enter a repeater in your area, then all you have to do is get the information of that repeater and enter it. So I'll just make one up. We'll just say 147.300, and we'll title that repeater 1. I'll enter my tone mode. You can select tone or tone squelch. Some use DTCS. Again, it just depends on the details of the repeater you want to enter, and then you'll select the tone. You'll want to select your offset, if it's plus or minus, and enter the offset of that repeater. Once you've done this, you can go back up to radio and upload to your radio. You'll see the window again that has the drop downs for the COM port, vendor, and model. It's going to select the options you already picked, so you'll select OK. And once again, it'll notify you that the cloning process is taking place, and this time on the radio it's now blinking green, letting me know that the data is being written to the radio. And it looks like it's done. And one of the last things that you'll want to do is you'll want to save your code plug. So you can go to File, Save As, and then save it, maybe on your desktop or wherever you want to save it on your computer. And then next time, if you want to add another frequency, you can open that code plug up in Chirp, enter the frequency, and then go back to Upload to Radio and save your new code plug. So that's all there is to programming this radio with Chirp. As mentioned, I'll have some other videos coming up on how to use Chirp with a couple of the Yaesu models from the previous video. And thanks for watching.